Playing It Safe is a really important episode of Barney and Friends. Obviously, all of the episodes give really important life lessons, but when it comes to child safety, that is paramount. This is the third episode of the first season of Barney and Friends, and I don't recall this episode from my childhood. While watching these for nostalgia, I've realised that I actually don't remember that many specific moments from Barney. But I'm still enjoying watching these, partly for this nostalgia and partly to analyse them from an early years education perspective. And I have to say, this one, in terms of being very educational, is really great. For the nostalgia, it wasn't that strong for me because I didn't recognise that many of the songs, and that's usually the source of nostalgia for me. But I still see a lot of value in this episode. So it starts off, it starts off with a song about three little monkeys in the bed, which I kind of vaguely remember. I partly remember the song, but not fully. But then Barney comes along and they decide to make their own cars out of cardboard boxes, which I thought was a really great idea and a very fun way to get children to pay attention to road safety by making them be the cars. And then there's some education about road safety and how to not run in front of cars and things. And I feel like that's going to be so much more beneficial than just lecturing a child about road safety. So I think that was pretty good. And then the children all had to say something, one piece of advice about safety. And I thought that was a pretty good idea as well, to get children to repeat things back. I mean, it's a tactic that teachers often employ, is to get children to tell you what they've learned. But I think it worked very well here as well, because then the tips aren't just coming from Barney, but also directly from the children. But it doesn't just look at road safety, we also have stranger danger. I don't think they used the term stranger danger in this. I'm not sure when that became a thing. I assume that's also a popular, it is a phrase in America, because I think it was in an episode of Full House recently. But I don't know if they used that term, but it was all about strangers, and they told this through the story of Little Red Riding Hood. And obviously, children's stories are fantastic at providing life lessons. A lot of the classic fairy stories actually are much darker than the children's versions, but I think it's very clear that the big bad wolf was a stranger and he was going to do nasty things to Granny, and that Little Red Riding Hood should not give him the time of day. And I thought it was a really nice way of getting that message across. It gave the children in the episode a chance to dress up and act out the scenes. It's something children watching it at home or at school can go and then do the same thing. And by encouraging children to put on their own performances of these stories, it helps to cement these messages much more firmly. So I think the episode is doing a great job, not just of delivering these messages, but of encouraging children or parents and teachers to facilitate the same kind of activities to reinforce that message in the same or similar ways. Interestingly, I wrote down not one song in this. When I've been watching these, I've been writing down songs that have took me straight back to my childhood. Not one. So for me, the nostalgia wasn't really there with this episode, but I really appreciate just how educational it is, how versatile it is in providing different ways of getting these messages across, and also, as I said, providing parents and teachers with ways of encouraging children to explore these themes through crafts, with making cars, through creativity, and also with dramatizing stories, and even just reading the books, reading Little Red Riding Hood. If children don't necessarily want to or unable to put on their own little productions, just reading the stories is also a good way of getting the message across. There's also a really nice quote in this. I can't remember which child said it, but he said, "When someone says, 'be careful,' it's kind of like saying, 'I love you.'" And I thought that was such a sweet sentiment. Of course, there are plenty of times when we say be careful to somebody and we don't actually love them. But it does show that somebody actually cares about you and they want you to be safe. And I think that was a really nice message, because a lot of people, adults, parents, may struggle with saying "I love you" to their children. I don't want to stereotype, but often it can be fathers, because, well, society has told men to quell their emotions or to put a lid on them, which is not right and not acceptable. But a lot of men, and I am stereotyping, but unfortunately that's because of the effects of society. A lot of fathers may struggle to directly show their emotion to their children. Hopefully not so much nowadays, but I think definitely more in the early 90s. But this is telling children, if your parent or caregiver or whomever says be careful, it generally means they're saying I love you, and they're just showing their love in a different way. So I thought that was a really sweet message and something that was quite thought-provoking as well. So analysing the episode, absolutely brilliant, quality episode, educational, definitely encourages creativity and imaginative play as well. Maybe not so nostalgic for me, but I always love seeing early years education being triumphant, and when it comes to playing it safe, it's definitely a really good episode.